When you've learned how to adjust all of these properties, or what Final Cut Pro refers to as attributes, then you can start looking at how you can reuse them. So reusing these things is really important because, as you can see, you can spend quite a bit of time fine-tuning, creating these effects. The idea here is that you create a bank of effects, or you create an effect once and reuse it further on down the timeline. So if you wanted to just reuse something once, for example, then you could actually copy and paste the attributes that you've changed from one clip to another. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this from scratch. I'm going to do this clip here. I'm going to do a very simple change. I'm going to bring it to 50% scale, and I'll leave it in the center. Now, if I get another clip, what I can do is I can actually copy the attribute change that I made on this clip and paste it onto this one. So if I Command C to copy that, and then instead of Command V, I'll Control click and I'll go down to Paste Attributes. And it's asking me, do I want to, what is it that I want to paste in terms of the video attributes? Now, all I did was a very basic motion effect. So I'll click Basic Motion. Basic Motion is up here, so we know exactly what those attributes are. I'll click OK. And now that clip has had those attributes pasted onto them. Now, it's very straightforward when you just have a static. I know motion effect can sometimes be a bit of a misnomer because there is no motion as such, but that's what it's referred to. Now let's say I do actually have a motion effect with motion in it. So I'm going to keep this one. And this time I'll do a very simple keyframe movement from the top left down to the bottom right. I'm going to do this over just a few frames. So that moves quite fast, and I can see the keyframes up here. Now, let's say, no, in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to keyframe that to a point roughly halfway through the clip. That should be easier to illustrate what I want to do now. So I'm going, it starts animating and animates to roughly halfway through the clip, and then it stays there for the second half of the clip. Now I'm going to get a much longer clip, and this one is 10 seconds, so I'll find a it's not too much longer, it's shorter. Where's the long clip when you need it? Okay, it's 15 seconds it'll have to do. Right. Now, what I'll do is I'll lay that next to it there. This time I'll copy and I'll go Control click Paste Attributes. Now, this time I'm going to focus on this checkbox here. I'm still going to paste the basic motion attributes, but this time, if I leave this selected, Scale Attribute Times, it's going to have that animation happen over the over a proportional amount of frames relative to the length of the clip that I'm pasting it into. Okay, so if I scale attribute times, and if the animation happened over roughly half of my previous short clip, it's still going to happen over half of the new longer clip. Now if I deselect that, it will make the animation happen at exactly the same length as it did in the original clip. So I'll deselect it, click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my keyframe section on my timeline, and that's just by clicking on that down there. So that's an overlays button down on the timeline that shows me the animation. Now you'll see that the time that it takes for the animation to happen here is exactly the same. I didn't scale attribute times. So if I undo that, and do it again, and this time paste attributes and scale attribute times, you'll see that it lengthens the amount of time so that it's still happening over half the length. Now let's say I use an even longer clip. So I'll just copy this one up the timeline and paste attributes. And this time I won't scale attribute times. You see that it still happens over the original duration of the animation. If, on the other hand, I leave that checked, you'll see that it now stretches it out so that it's still happening over half the clip. So this is important. If you want the animation to happen at exactly the same rate as it did on the original clip, as it does on the new clip, then you need to deselect scale attribute times. Now, if you want to get rid of any of these attributes, you can just control-click and remove attributes, and it will ask you what you want to remove. That's fine, and I can do it to that one as well. So remove attributes just gets rid of any of those changes that you've made. So you can copy and paste. That's one way of creating an effect once and reusing it. But let's say you want to have a bank of effects that you can reuse in all of your projects. Now, these are going to be saved in the preferences folder. So if someone comes along and deletes all your preferences, these are going to be gone. So these are kind of something that if you want to hold on to and take with you from computer to computer in a lab, then you're going to have to back up those preference files after you've created a change. Now, if you're on your own machine, your own laptop, then it's fine. You're not going to, you can deal with that as you come to it. Now, creating a favorite is very simple. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a motion favorite called HDV top left. And when I do that, I'm going to be able to reuse this anytime I want to place a video on the top left corner of my canvas. So I go into the motion, change that to 50. I know the center points that I need that to be at. It's minus 360, minus 270. Now, that is a motion effect. Now I want to go up to the effects, go down to make favorite motion. And when I click that, in my effects, I now have an effect, delete that, I made that earlier, called pull from water to field. It's named after the clip that I applied the effect to. Now, if I want to, I can change the name in here to top left HDV. And this will be stored in my favorites folder from here on in. So any clip that I bring in now, I can drag that effect and it's going to automatically do that. Now, think about all of the things that you might want to do on a regular basis. If you're working as a freelance video producer, you might be doing lots of kind of corporate stuff, you might be doing documentaries, and you might want to have a regular type of effect that you use. You might have something, some kind of a transition that you like, such as the one I did a moment ago with the clips that transitioned in. I can't find them. I may have deleted that as I was working. Anyway, you get the idea that you make it once, you save it as a favorite, and then that's banked. You can use that from there on without having to go through the rigmarole of going and resizing and things like that. Alright, so that's reusing effects as favorites and copying and pasting. Now, I've already kind of shown you here, but the last thing I wanted to show you was alternate ways of viewing your keyframes. Now, you can get into your keyframes if you want on the timeline, and to do that, you click the button down there next to the audio. It's the clip keyframes button, and what that does is it opens up a layer below your clips, and each one of these has a graph that's going to represent the graph up here, and you select which property it is you want to look at by control clicking, going basic motion, and selecting whatever it is that you want to view. So in this case, this one has had its scale change, so I'll just pop open basic motion scale, and you can even get up, or sorry, you can get in there and adjust the property of it, add keyframes and things like that. But I personally don't like using this because you have all of this space up here with all of these controls. You have a timeline there. There's much more room to get in without the margin for error up here than you do working down here. But you can always have this open and you can pull a keyframe backwards or forwards if you want to adjust its position on the timeline. Just so that you're aware that you can get in and adjust your animations down here on the timeline as well. Now, actually, before I finish up on keyframing, there is another way that you can keyframe out here on the canvas, and that's a kind of a coverall command that you can give to a clip by clicking Control and K. And when you click Control and K together, you'll get the green bars appear there to show that you have a keyframe, and you'll see that it's keyframed all of those different properties or attributes there. Now again, this could be something that you want to do, but I recommend you stay away from it, because if all of these are keyframed and you move down the timeline and you accidentally nudge something, then it's going to actually create an animation to that point. What I suggest you do is that you work in here and you isolate the exact attribute that you want to change by keyframing it manually, attribute by attribute. When you do that, if you accidentally change another attribute, then it's not going to have a visual effect of what can sometimes appear as what I would call creep. If you have a keyframe and you have a very slight movement happening over maybe 10 or 15 seconds, you have this slight creeping that can be barely perceived, but you might actually not notice it until you've output your program, and then you see your clip moving 1 frame or 1 pixel every 2 seconds, and it's a bit of a nightmare then to try and get back in and fix what you've done wrong. So isolate the property here and just work in the motion tab. Now, when I say just work in the motion tab, I mean to place your keyframes. By all means, when you have a keyframe placed here, it's fine to click and move your object there to get a rough position. Okay,